Yeah.
Pick up today on Daf Lamed Vav, or the top of Lamed Vav Amud Aleph, 13 lines from the top. Okay, so the Mishnah told us.
Yeah.
So the Mishnah told us the Dine Mamanos, Tameim V'Hatoros, Matchilim and Hagadol. So Mishnah said we have cases of monetary cases or cases of Tum and Tara. We begin with the judge of the highest stature is the first one to issue their opinion, but by Dina Nefashos, we start from the side of the panel of the Dayanim. So Gemara tells us, Amar of Anna. Amar Rav. Rav says, Anna have b'minyana debei Rebbe, u'minoi didi have maschil bereisha. So Rav says, I was in the minyan in the court of Rebbe, and Rebbe he allowed me to be the first person to start. Obviously, in that case, Rav is saying Rebbe was the greatest of stature within that basin, and still he started the judgment from Rav. If you look at Rashi explains to us that it is a monetary case, not a capital case. Rashi says, said this was when the Bezdin of Rebbe came out with the din of extortionists. And they came out with a special din that if, in a case of extortion, if the aggrieved party does not purchase the land back within 12 months, that someone else, a third party, can then go ahead and purchase the land. However, if they did, they have to pay an extra 25% back to the original owner. So Rashi brings that down to show us this is a din imaminus case, and within this case, Rav is telling us that Rebbe had Rav start the process and not started. We said the Mishnah told us that you start from the gadol, right? As the Gemara asked, "V'hanan maschilim nagadol tanan." Right. So why did Rebbe start from Rav instead of from himself? Tanan Amar Rav Breidu Rava v'itema Rav Hillel Breidu Rebbe Valas Shiny Minyana Debei Rav. So he said Rebbe happened to be, as we've seen, I think, in other stories, that Rebbe was a great anav, and therefore, always in the court of Rebbe, he would always start, whether it was Dinamamanus, Tara, Tmeos, and Taras, where the Mishnah tells us you should start from the Dayan of the greatest stature. Rebbe would not agree to start the cases. He would always have somebody else start the cases. Right, Rashi tells us why, and that is why Rebbe would always insist on one of the other dayanim starting the process. Okay, so now we brought in Rabbi Rava. We're going to bring a couple other, or at least one other statement. Rabba Rava v'itema Hillel Rava Mimos Moshe va'ad Rebbe lo matzinu Torah gedula b'makom echad. He said from the time of Moshe Rabbeinu up until the time of Rebbe, until Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, we didn't have another instance where the political greatness and the religious greatness were together in one person. Right, we had one person that was the head on the political side and on the religious side. Obviously, Moshe Rabbeinu was leader and as well as the greatest Torah scholar, and Rabbi Yehuda Nasi as well, aside being the greatest Torah scholar, was the Nasi of the time. So we see in those two instances we have a confluence of the religious leadership and the political leadership. So the Gemara now brings a series of other people who came in between Moshe Rabbeinu and Rebbe to try to see, maybe somebody else fits the bill. So the Gemara asks below, V'havi Yoshua. Okay, well, the first one that comes up is, what about Yoshua? He took over. Obviously, he was a leader after Moshe, and presumably, the Gemara is assuming he also was the greatest Torah authority of that time. It says no, Have Elazar. No, apparently Elazar. Rashi says Elazar Chavero b'Torah. So Elazar was at least his equal in Torah. So it could be that Yoshua was obviously, one of the greatest Talmidei Chacham of the time, but at least he had at least one counterpart, and so it doesn't fit the bill of the one person who is above everybody else, both in the political leadership and in the Torah leadership. Right. So V'have Pinchas. What about Pinchas? So Have Zakanim. Then no, Pinchas also had peers in Torah, had the Zakanim, and Rashi tells us the Zakanim. You go on Osniel ben Kenaz, the Ivtzanu Boaz, and I think it's the Bach. Someone would change the girsa because of other places Ivtzan is another name for Boaz. So to change the girsa that it's not three people, it's Ivtzan Shehu Boaz. So, but in any event, we have other Talmidei Chacham that are of equal stature to Elazar. So the Gemara says again, V'ha'ave Shaul. What about Shaul? Shaul was obviously the Melech and also a great Talmid Chacham. So no, have Shmuel. No, Shmuel Hanavi was living at the same time as Shaul. Nach Nafshe. But what about, we know that Shmuel passed away before Shaul did. So when Shmuel passed away, wasn't Shaul then the greatest Torah scholar and the king, obviously at the same time? So our answer is no. Kulhu Shnei Kamrin. And we're talking about people where throughout their entire time of leadership, they also held the mantle of Torah. So Shaul doesn't fit the bill because most of Shaul's reign was in the presence of Shmuel Hanavi, who was the greater Torah scholar of the generation. Okay, the Gemara continues. V'ha'ave David. What about David HaMelech? So wasn't David HaMelech? Didn't he fit the bill of being both the political and the spiritual leader? No, have Ira Iri. So no, David lived alongside of Ira Iri, and Rashi tells us Moed Katan Amrinan have a Masni Lehu L'Rabbanon Al Gabe Karmuk Sasos. David Hayaman Higa Lav L'Rosh. That when Ira Iri, when he used to give his shiurim, all the Rabbanim would be sitting in front of him on the floor on pillows and cushions, and just to show the greatness of Ira in Torah. So again, when David was not considered the greatest Torah scholar of that generation. V'hana Nafshe was the same question we asked before, but didn't Iri he died before David's reign was over. And again, the Gemara answers no. Kulu Shnei Kamrinan. We're only looking for examples where the entire reign of that person they were the greatest in Torah and the greatest political leader. V'have Shlomo. What about Shlomo HaMelech? V'have Shimon ben Gera. Shimon ben Gera lived alongside Shlomo, and Shimon ben Gera also was a greater, or at least as great Torah scholar. V'hakatle. But Shlomo HaMelech had Shimon ben Gera killed. So after that point, then Shlomo would have both the political and the religious mantle together. And again, same answer. Kulei Shnei Kamrina. We're looking for examples where, for the entire period of rulership, they occupied both positions. So what about Chizkiah HaMelech? We learned earlier in the Masechta had created the revolution of Torah study within the Malchus. So wouldn't he have held both those mantles? No, have Shevna. There was also Shevna, who we actually also learned about earlier in the Masechta. And Rashi tells us Shevna Shayishivasu Gedola Mijat Chizkiah. And Shevna had a greater academy, a greater base measures than Chizkiah did. Same question about Iktal, but he was killed, right? That was the story we had earlier where he went out of the city for, I think it was Sanhedrin, and he went out and his men were coming behind him, and then the Malach Gabriel closed the gate behind his men, and he came out all by himself, and he was killed. But again, so what about after that? Then Chizkiah was, the greatest in both realms. And then again, the same answer, Kulush Nikarmina. We're looking for an example where for the entire period of rulership, that person would be the greatest Torah scholar and the leader. V'have Ezra, one last one. V'have Ezra. What about Ezra? No, no. In the time of Ezra, there's also Nehemiah who had greater political stature. The other ones were giving examples of greater or equal religious stature, but Nehemiah apparently had greater political stature than Ezra did. So Amar Rav Ada bar Ava. Rav Ava comes and adds, Afani Omer, the most Rebbe of Rav Ashi. Okay, so from Moshe Rabbeinu to Rebbe, those are the only two people that occupied the religious and the political mantle at the same time. But what about afterwards? So from Rebbe to Rav Ashi, Lamatzina Torah Gedula b'makom echad. So that is so Rav tells us that. Rav Ava tells us that after Rebbe, we have to wait until Rav Ashi to have that same confluence of religious and political leadership. Lo matzinu Torah gedula b'makom echad. V'lo, but the Gemara says no, it's not true. V'ha'avehuna bar Nasan. Bar Nasan, sorry, but we said, but the Gemara asked no, but we did have Huda bar Nasan, who was at the same time as Rav Ashi. So we were arguing that Rav Ashi even held the same, even would classify for this same idea of being the religious and the political leader. And my answer is no. Huda bar Nasan make of habakayef leil Rav Ashi. No, Huda bar Nasan was not subservient, but he would defer to Rav Ashi. So Rav Ashi, according to Maskana the Gemara, would qualify for this position of holding the religious and the political leadership together. Okay. Now we're going to turn to the second half of this din, which is din and nefashos matchilim natzad. We said that for din and nefashos, we do not start from the greatest of the dayanim. We start from one of the dayanim who are on the side, and I think we talked about it in the Mishnah. We may get to it today, which is the Mishnah that really lays it out. But the dayanim would sit in a semicircle. So we say inside, it's someone on the outsides. They would sit in a bit of an arc semicircle. So minani milay. So how do we know? Where do we know this? That we should not start from the gadol in a capital case. We shouldn't start from the gadol with dayanim. Amar v'yachad bar papa amar kra lo sa'ana al riv. So Baz tells us lo sa'ana al riv, but it's written without the yud. Right? Lo sa'ana al rav. It actually says so. So the limud is you should not argue with the rav, with the greatest of the dayanim. And we look at Rashi. Lo sa'ana al riv, about right across in the Rashi. Ksiv below yud. Right? Riv is written chaser without a yud. Mashma lo tachlok al mufla shel bezdin. You should not argue on the head of the bezdin. Hilkach lo maschilin mei. Therefore, we do not start from the head of the bezdin in capital cases. Dil machazilei chova, because perhaps that head judge will be leaning towards a guilty verdict for the defendant. Lo palgina ilave, and nobody's going to go ahead and argue with him. Maschilin min hatzad echad shelo yishma echad divrei echad min hamizakin v'yaskim imo, and therefore we instead start from the side, and therefore because perhaps even though the head of the bezdin maybe want to be mechayev the defendant, but perhaps if we start from somewhere else, another person may bring up some idea of zechus for the person, and therefore it opens the door for other dayanim to agree with that person because the svara is already really out there and on the table. And the Rishonim discuss here, it seems to imply from Rashi that this is almost a halacha, that if once the dayan of the bezdin says something, the head of the bezdin says something, that the other Rabbanim are not allowed to argue on it. A lot of the Rishonim learn it that it's not necessarily an issa or a prohibition on going against the dayan, because again, if you're a dayan and you think the person is innocent, you should have to say something and provide your opinion, but it's more of a chilling effect. That if the head of the bezdin is the first one to speak and they want to be mechayev, it almost quiets the other dayanim, unless there's some obvious mistake, like we were talking about the other day. If you have a mistake in the Torah law or a mistake in a clear halacha, that's one thing. But if you're talking about shigul hadas and just somebody's opinion, if the head of the bezdin is the first one to speak up and wants to be mechayev the guy, it changes the dynamic of the rest of the bezdin to bring in zechus. And we know the whole list in our Mishnah was giving ideas where we want to try to open the door as much as possible to be melamed zechus for in a capital case. We do what we can to hopefully not be putting people to death. So most Rishonim do say that this isn't a strict halacha, but rather we want to continue to give as many chances as we can to find this person innocent. Okay, so that's one pasuk that we learned this idea from, that we're machlim and atzad. Back in the Gemara, second opinion. Rabbi Bar Rav Chana Amar Rabbi Yochanan Mehacha Vayomer David la'anashav chigru ish escharbo v'yachkru ish escharbo. So this is in the case of Naval, when we're dealing with the case of Morav Malchus. We see from the pasuk that David first, everybody else, all of David's men first, they pick up their sword, and Rashi tells us that means that's a lashon of din, because if they judge somebody to be Morav Malchus, the punishment is misa. So he says first we see everyone else gets their sword, and only then does David grab his sword. And it actually seems from here, the Rishonim also bring down, there could be a machlokas between these two opinions in terms of the sources. It may not just be what the source is, but it could have ramifications. From the pasuk of David, it seems that everybody else first would give their opinion, and only then would David, who is the head of the court, only then would David give his opinion. But from the first idea, from Lo Sa'aneh Al Riv, it's not necessarily that every one of the Dayanim has to give their opinion, and only then does the head of Beis Din. But just at least from Rashi's understanding, we want to get a couple of other opinions out there, because once somebody starts bringing in opinions of Zechus for the defendant, it opens the door that other people could then agree with it. So it doesn't necessarily have to be everybody and then the head Dayan. It could be at least one or a few opinions come out, and then the head of the Beis Din can come out with his. It doesn't have to necessarily be last, which seems to be implied from the case of David, that David was the very, very last, not the first. Okay. Then we'll move on with some related rulings. Amarav, we are 6 lines from the bottom of Amar Aleph. Amarav. Shona Adam L'Talmido, V'Dani Bo B'Dinei Nefashos. So Rav says, a Rebbe can go ahead and teach halachos to his Talmud, and then still go ahead and judge with him on a capital case. So the concern here would be, if you are learning from this Rebbe, you may just be parroting exactly what your Rebbe is saying, and if you're judging together on a court case, especially in this case in a capital case, perhaps it's only should be treated as one opinion, because you're really presenting the same svaros. Right? Rashi says, so Rashi 3 lines before it gets too wide, Shona Adam L'Talmido, Umar Lo Panim L'Zuchos U'Lechova, and you can even teach your Talmud reasons to be mezakeh somebody or to be mechayev someone, b'tocha din, even, and Rashi brings down even in the middle of a case, v'danimo, and then still you guys can participate in the judge. The Rebbe and the Talmud could participate in the judgment together. V'nimna imo olus chus olachova umatin hadin al pi haTalmud ke'echad min hadayanim, and the Talmud would have his own voice. It would be counted among the judges as its own opinion, even though we would be nervous that perhaps the judgment that he's giving is only a reflection of what he's gotten from his Rebbe. So the Gemara asks on this, though. The Gemara asks, Beisiveh, Hataros v'Tameos, in a case of Tumah and Tahara, Ha'av u'beno, Harav u'Talmido, Monon lo Shnayim. If you have a father and a son, or a Rav and a Talmud, you can count them as 2 opinions for cases of Tumah and Tahara. However, Dinei Mamanos, monetary cases, Dinei Nefashos, capital cases, Dinei Makos, cases of lashes, Kiddush HaChodesh, Ibra Shana, or Mekadesh HaChodesh, or to make a leap year, Avu no, Harav HaTalmud, Ein Monalam Ela Achad. So in any of those cases, which include capital cases, a father and a son and a Rav and a Talmud can only be counted as one opinion. So we see from here, though, clearly it is a question on Rav, who says that a Talmud and a Rav can judge together in a capital case and be counted as 2 different opinions. Let's look in the Rashi. Rashi explains us what's different about Tumah and Tahara. It's the first Y, or the first medium line. There is one Y line in Rashi. Because in a case of Tumah and Tahara, you really only need one person to give the halacha. You don't need a special number of people. Ella imkein chokin, unless there's some sort of disagreement or some question. So if you're talking about a case of Tum and Tara, you can count the Av and the Ben together. But if you're talking about a case of a monetary case, unafashis or a capital case, umakos, sheminyan shalahem, af betchilas hadin. In those cases, right from the outset of the case, you have to have a certain number, right? 3 by a monetary case, 23 by a capital case, and so on. Therefore, that's our shlosha, right? Capital monetary case is 3. The nefashos kav gimel, the kiddush chodesh, it's our shlosha. The mishpat sivbei. Skip that Rashi. It's our shlosha. So there, in that case, last line of Rashi, ein ha'avu b'no ksherin zeh zeh. So in that case, the Mishnah is telling us that a father and a son cannot be kosher to judge together and count as 2 separate opinions. And therefore, there's a question on the opinion of Rav, who told us that a Rav and a Talmud can judge together in a capital case and be counted as two separate opinions. All right, so turn to Amid Beis. Rav says back, Kikam Rav, Kigon Rav Kahana Rav Asi. Said no, when I said my judgment that a Rav and a Talmud can be treated as two separate opinions in a capital case, that was specifically in a case of Talmidim like Rav Kahana and Rav Asi. Why? To ligmarei de Rav havu tzriche. They needed to hear the halachos, just the basically the black letter law, what the halacha was from the Rebbe, from Rav. But they didn't need the analysis, meaning they were able to, they needed to get to understand the strict halacha, but the application of the halacha they were able to do on their own. So they weren't necessarily just parroting the opinion of the Rebbe. They needed to learn what the basic halacha was, but then the application within the case, they had their own analysis and therefore could be counted as their own opinion. Look at Rashi, top Rashi, Kikam Rav, the Talmido Nimna, Lo Amar El Kagon Rav Kahana Rav Asi, look at Rav Tzriche, Lemasha Shamamera, where they did need to learn the actual halacha from the Rebbe. Aval Savare, Limtso Rayos, Veleshivat Taimim, Eidon Tzrichen. But in order to apply, to learn proofs and to apply reasoning behind the law itself, they did not need that. They did not need to learn that directly from the Rebbe. They had that capacity by themselves. Therefore, they were counted as their own opinion. If the worry was just that you learn the actual strict halacha from your Rebbe, so we go back to the original transmitting of the Torah. Kol Yisrael nami Moshe kiblu. Right? Originally, everybody learned the Torah from Moshe Rabbeinu, and still we know Moshe Rabbeinu appointed 70 judges. So who could judge with Moshe if Moshe was the one who taught them their Torah? If we wouldn't, if that was going to disqualify a Talmud, right? Right? Because the same in this case. If Rav Kahana and Rav Asi would have learned this halachas from a different Rav, then they would have still come to the same. They wouldn't have necessarily just parroted that same reasoning from a different Rebbe. They would have still taken that Torah and then been able to apply it with their own reasoning. Okay, the Gemara now moves on and talks about the list that we have in our Mishnah. Amar Rabbi Avo. It's 3 lines from the top. Asara Dvarim Yesh Ben Dinim Amanos L'Din Nefashos. We have 10 things that are listed in our Mishnah that differentiate capital cases and monetary cases. The kulon ein nohagin b'shor haniskal chutz mi'esrim b'shlosha. And of all these 10 differences that we have, none of them apply to a case of shor haniskal, a shor that killed a human that is to be put to death. None of these other halachos apply except for needing a bezin of 23. And Rashi reminds us. We look Rashi 4 lines down where it's narrow. None of the other differences or none of the other criteria that we bring down for Dina Nefashos apply to the Shor HaNiskal to make it even. Why? Even though we said in our first Mishnah, that a Shor HaNiskal needs a bezin of 23, because we had a limud, Kemisas Bailim Kach Misas Hashor. So we had a limit in the pasuk in our first Mishnah that taught us that you needed 23 dayanim for a case of shor haniskal. So maybe we would have thought that all of the differences that we applied to capital cases would apply to a case of a shor haniskal. So Ravo says no. The only difference that applies is having 23 judges. So Gemara asks, Hanimile, how do we know this? Why do we carry through that limit of kamisas bailam kach misas ashor, carry it through to all criteria that we've laid out for Dina Nefashos? Amar V'acha Bar Papa, Amar Kra, Lo Satem Mishpat Evyoncha Berivo. So we have a pasuk that we brought in earlier that we do not tilt the judgment of your Evyon, which here we translate not as a poor person, but someone who's poor in judgment. And we don't lean the judgment if it's only one person. That's how we learn that we need to have somewhat of a supermajority for capital cases. But the Gemara learns out Mishpat Evyoncha Iatamateh. This is specific to the mishpat of your Evyon of a person. Avatamata Mishpat Shel Shor HaNiskal. But you would judge a case of shor haniskal even if it was only a difference of 1, right? Even if you had a 12 to 11 verdict, that would be enough to kill a shor haniskal. And Rashi brings down why do we have this limud? Lo sateh l'ra al pi echad, right? We said this pasuk teaches us that we cannot kill somebody for a majority of only one. We can't have a 12-11 verdict is not enough. And from this, right? Because if you think about it, we actually now have competing limudim. We have one limud that teaches us a majority of one would work for a shor and eskal, and the other pasuk that taught us that kamisas abayim kach kamisas hashor, which we learned that 23 judges are needed by shor and eskal. Okay, so now we have one on one side, one on the other, and 8 other halachos from our Mishnah. So why do we choose to apply to mimic those 8 with the lenient version and not maybe it should be all right? This is the only one that's pulled out that's different between capital cases and shor and eskal. But Rashi says no. We mehalcha gemir lekulu, gemir lekulu malos to lo nihige chutz michav gimel. Mistabra the hakesh lahachiasi shehu ikar hadin utchilazo avakulo enach lahat salai asu. Right, because the other judgments are the one of the 23 bezin is really a special limud from the pasuk, but it doesn't necessarily have to do with hatzala, with actually saving the person. It's not the other list in our Mishnah are things that we try to do in order to for the defendant. What do we have? Why are we trying to be extra compassionate on the shore? It's different than on a person, especially because by a shore we have another pasuk. Right? We have a pasuk that we have this rod that is going around and killing people, or I'm sure that's killing people. We have a mitzvah to remove that from our midst. So because we have that competing idea, then we end up making the comparison to shor and iskal only in the case of 23 judges, which is straight from the gzeir of the pasuk. But with all the other 9 items, which are to be melamid zchus for the defendant, we do not apply those to a shor and iskal. Okay, Gemara continues talking about the list of 10. Oh, sorry. Actually, we ask on this. We ask on this question. So Asara, Hatet we said, right? We brought on this case saying that there are 10 things that are between, right? 10 items that are different between capital cases and monetary cases. So the Gemara asks, not 10? Our Mishnah only lists 9. And the Gemara asks back, no, Asara Gatani, no, read the list. The list is there are 10 in the list. It's not 9. It's actually 10. So the Gemara answers no. Now, really, 2 of the items that all people of any lineage can judge on a monetary case, but not on a capital case, and the idea that you need 23 judges really are one and the same, or they come from the same source, I should say. Looking at Rashi, Hatisha, and it's a few lines down, about 3 lines down, it says. Why do we say that mamzer cannot judge in a capital case? It all stems from the fact that we need 23 judges. The Hainu Sanhedrin. We need to have an official Sanhedrin. Sanhedrin Ksiv, and we'll learn this limud later, but we have a special limud by the Sanhedrin where we know why we have limud from the Psukim, why you cannot have mamzer and be a part of it. But because the whole idea that a mamzer can't be part of the judges comes from the fact that we need 23, we're viewing those as one. So now we're back to the question. We only actually have 9 differences, not 10 differences. So back in the Gemara. There are other ones that we can add to Tanya. They're not necessarily listed in our Mishnah, but there are still differences between the two, the capital cases and the monetary cases. We learn in a Brisa, Ein Moshivim b'Sanhedrin Zakein V'Saris Mishein Labanim. The Brisa tells us you cannot point to the Sanhedrin somebody who is older, and Rashi tells us older. Sheshachach Kfar Tzarki B'Banim Eino Rachmane. So it's somebody that's older that has forgotten of, I guess, the pains of bringing up children, and will therefore have left compassion. Same with somebody who's a saris, who cannot have children, or someone who doesn't happen to have children. So in all these cases, again, because in capital cases we're trying to elicit as much compassion as possible to find the zechus where we can. So therefore, we want to try to. We don't allow people who we are afraid don't have the proper compassion. We don't want to put them on the Sanhedrin. Rabbi Yehuda adds, Af Achzari. said even just a generally cruel person, we don't add him to the Sanhedrin because, again, for the same reason, we want to be able to be melamed zchus for the defendant. And like we had previously, the chilufeihen, the mesis, the opposite is true in a case of mesis, of somebody who entices people to do avodah zarah. We do not have all of these leniencies. We do not try to be melamed zchus, even though it's a capital case. The Rachman Amar, lo sachmo v'lo sachasa love. You should not have mercy, and you should not cover up for him. And we learn from these different ideas of what of the leniencies we apply to the capital cases, we do not apply for case of a mesis. Okay, next part in our Mishnah told us, anybody is kosher to be a judge in a monetary case. So Gemara asks, Hakol la'asuyei mai. Who are we coming to include? Who is this Hakol? Who are we adding in? Who would otherwise be excluded? Amar Rav Yehuda la'asuyei mamzer. It's coming to include a mamzer. We had brought this up. I think Rashi in the Mishnah, I believe, already had taught us this. So it's a mamzer who doesn't have, right, someone who doesn't have pure genealogy is allowed to be a judge in a monetary case, but we'll see later cannot be a judge in a capital case. But Gemara asks, "Hatani dechadazim." Though we already learned this ruling in the name of Rabbi Yehuda, another Mishnah told us, anybody who can judge a monetary case can also judge a capital case. But we have some dayanim that are qualified to judge in a monetary case, but are not qualified to judge in a capital case. We looked into it. Who is it coming to include from a monetary case? Rabbi Yehuda says, mamzer. He says it's coming to include a mamzer. So we see, why did Rabbi Yehuda feel the need to teach us the same halacha twice, that a mamzer is allowed to be a judge in a monetary case? So we answer, so one comes to include a ger, one to include a mamzer, both who do not have this pure genealogy. We need to have both cases. If I would have only had a case to include ger, I would think maybe because a ger doesn't have any restrictions on, or I would say not any restrictions, but they can marry somebody of pure genealogy. There are certain other restrictions for a ger, but they can marry a woman of pure genealogy. So perhaps we would think that they could be a dayan. Have a mamzer, but a mamzer, because there are restrictions on a mamzer who they can marry, then they perhaps couldn't be a dayan. And the flip side, Yashmin and mamzer, if it would have only taught us that a mamzer could be a judge in a monetary case, I would think maybe the b'mitibak shera, because a mamzer, even though they themselves have restrictions, they come from two Jewish parents, and so maybe because they had that more different type of genealogy, perhaps that would be enough to allow them to be a dayan. But a ger who does not come from Jewish parents, maybe that would not be enough. They would be still excluded, even from monetary cases. Therefore, we need both opinions to show us that both a ger and a mamzer can be dayanim in monetary cases. So in all these cases, though, we've been understanding that there is an issue with someone who doesn't have proper genealogy to be a dayan in a capital case. So now the Gemara is going to go ahead and actually teach us, where do we know the source of that ruling from the beginning? Right. So this is the last piece of our mission that we had. That not all are kosher for din and nefashos. So, and we just learned earlier, what does that mean? It's coming to exclude mamzer or a ger. So my time, what is the reason why you have to have pure genealogy to be a dayan as part of the Sanhedrin for a capital case? Tani Rav Yosef, kishem shebezdin menukin b'tzedek, kach menukin mikol mum. Just like the Beis Din is free or pure to judge, so too they need to be free from any mum. And we learn this as to be a genealogical mum. So Amar Meimar, Mikra. Meimar says, what is the pasuk? How do we learn this? So he says the pasuk from Shir Hashirim, Kulach Yafar Rayasi Umum Ein Bach. He said the pasuk tells us that my beloved is beautiful and does not have any blemish. And I don't know if it's Rashi or the other Rishonim bring down, we can't say that the entire nation of Am Yisrael doesn't have any genealogical blemishes. So this pasuk is learned to apply to the Sanhedrin. So the Gemara asks, "V'dilma mum mamish," but maybe the pasuk just says umum meibach, doesn't have a mum. Maybe it means a physical blemish. Why do we know? Why do we think it's talking about a genealogical blemish? Amar Rav Acha bar Yaakov Amar Kra v'syatzvu sham imach. The pasuk when Moshe separates the Shivim Zakanim, it says they will stand here with you. Imach b'dom and lach, and we learn that the limit is they are like you, that they are genealogically pure like you, like Moshe. So Gemara asks, "V'dilma hasa mishum shechina." Maybe there's different there because those Zakanim were going to interact directly with the Shekhinah, and therefore that's why they had to be a pure genealogy. But maybe it wouldn't apply to all Dayanim. Elam Rav Nachman by Yitzchak, rather from a different pasuk, from a pasuk that we have by Yisro. Amar Kra v'nasu itcha itcha v'domen lach lahave. So he says in the pasuk there where those judges by Yisro were not going to speak directly to the Shekhinah. And in that case, still we have the same limit. It has to be someone that is genealogically similar to Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay, so we'll do the Mishnah. There's a long daf tomorrow, so we'll give head start. Okay, new Mishnah. Mishnah, we are at the bottom of Lamed Vav Amud Beis. And this is the Mishnah that tells us a bit more of the setup, the physical setup of the Sanhedrin. So, the Mishnah tells us, Sanhedrin haisa kechatzi goren agula. The Sanhedrin was a semicircle, an open semicircle. So this way all the judges could see each other. Rashi gives us a bit more insight. Why specifically does it have to be a circle and why only a half circle? So it's Rashi, Kechatzi Goresh Agula. Agula hayu yoshvin. So generally the judges would have to sit in a circular fashion. Because we want them each to see each other. Because if they were to be sitting in a line, they wouldn't be able to see each other. And they wouldn't be able to converse and judge properly. We don't want to have them in a full circle, which again, obviously they'd all be able to see each other in a full circle. Because we want to have the litigants and the Eidim to be able to come and to everybody to see their faces. We want the judges to be able to see all the actors in the court case, because then they can properly ask their questions and engage with the Eidim and with the litigants. We wouldn't have, if you were sitting in a full circle and the Eidim are there, so obviously the Eidim, their back would be to some of the Dayanim at all times. They're not going to, start and keep rotating around. So that's why the Mishnah settles on a semicircle of how the Dayanim are going to be set up. Okay, back in the Mishnah. We learned this earlier. We had two scribes that were sitting in front of the Dayanim. One on the right side, one on the left side. And they would write the words of those judges that had an idea for sechus, and those judges that had an idea for chiyuv, the scribes would write them down. And Rashi tells us that both scribes would be writing both the words of chiyuv and the words of zechiyah. So they both would write it together. Why? In case one of them made a mistake, they would go and look at the other ledger and be able to compare and come out and find out exactly what was said in the court case. Back at the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda has a different take. He says, no, shlosha. We actually had three scribes. Echad kosev divrei hamazakin. One would focus strictly on writing the words for zechus. Echad kosev divrei hamachayvin. One would focus strictly on writing the words of chiyuv. Shlishi kosev divrei hamazakin and divrei hamachayvin. And the third one would write both. So therefore, you had one that was very meticulous to write one side, one that was very meticulous to write the other side, and the third would try to catch everything. So again, in the case like look what Rashi tells us, shlosha havi shmitoch torechat hamim shir ba'alehem. Because we're worried, there's a lot of reasoning bouncing back and forth, and if everyone's focusing on everything, we're afraid something gets lost. Since now the other two scribes don't have the full burden of writing everything down, they won't have to use shorthand to get everything down. But even if they happen to make a mistake or we're not sure about something, we always can go back to that third ledger who's writing both, maybe not as carefully because he's trying to write everything. We can always go back and compare and try to get to the emes of what took place. Okay. Top of Lamed Zion. Top of Lamed. And there were 3 rows of the Talmidei Chachamim that were sitting in front of the actual Sanhedrin. And Rashi tells us, top Rashi, Shalosh Shuros, Kol Achas Keminyan Sanhedrin. Each row was Eser Shlosha. Each row was 23 to be equal with the judges that were sitting behind them. And why is it 23? Shem Yachliku Hachav Gimel. If, let's say, we have a split in the Beis Din, Rub Mechayv Miyat Mezakin, right? We already learned we can't have like a 12-11 verdict, so we have to add more judges in that case. But we have to add until we come to 71, and that's obviously the max that we are allowed to have. So therefore, if you have 23 judges and the max we need to get to is 71, so we have 48. We need 48 sitting in front, but 48 is not a number that is readily divisible by 23. So how do we set them up in front of the judges? So we don't want to have 2 24 rows because then what that happens? Then you have the row of the Talmidim larger than the row of the Dayanim, which is only 23 behind it. We don't want to have smaller rows because then it won't match up nicely. What about, all right, let's say do 2 23s and then a little row of 2 in the front. That we don't want to do also because again we want it to look uniform in the front. Hilkach Adi Shalosh. So we do 3 rows of 23 each. We have extra dayanim, but it's fine. They won't actually be counted as part of the 71, but at least we have a uniform look at the front of the Beis Din. And continuing in the Mishnah, second line, Kol echad ve'echad makir es mekomo. And each of the Talmidei Chachamim would know their exact place in the line. They'd know exactly where to sit within those 3 rows of 23. Rashi tells us why is that? They set it up that each row were Talmidei Chachamim of greater stature. So the closest to the Sanhedrin was of the greatest stature, and then it dropped each row down. And v'gam b'chol shura v'shura, and not only that, within each line, hoshivim keseder hagadol b'rosh sheni lamata himenu v'chein kulan, and even within each row, they were set up in their level of stature. So if you went down the rows, it would go one at a time. You would go each one exactly going down in the greatest at the front and the lowest at the end, and therefore each of the Talmidei Chacham had to know their exact spot, not only their line, but their exact spot within that line. Mishnah continues, if they had to add and do smicha to someone else, and Rashi says, let's say because one of the Dayanim passes away of the Sanhedrin, they would take from the first line, then one of the second line would move up to the first line, and then one from the third line move up to the second line. But now we have an empty spot on the third line. Then they find the next person up from the general community would come and fill that spot in the third line. So the shlishis, and he would take the spot in the third row. And in all these cases, that person that filled the spot ahead of them didn't just sit in the spot that was vacated. Rather, they really rejiggered everything. So you couldn't just say, all right, the first spot was vacated, so now someone from the second line moves up, because again, within each line, they were situated in stature. So it's basically almost like a full snake. Someone moved up on the first line, and then the entire row of 3 rows of 23 would all snake up one at a time and slot in to their respective spots on the line. We'll leave off that.